In this section, we're finally going to tie the action flow, the stateless process, and real-time queries together, allowing a user to see and create vehicles related to a selected policy from the Edit Policy page. In this task, we'll be using a User Interface Event, or UI event, which is new to xCP Designer. UI events gives us the ability to configure a more dynamic application where an action by an end user determines what appears in the application pages. xCP Designer provides several system events, and even custom events can be defined with more complex rules. We're going to do this in two steps. The first step is to add a button to the Edit Policy page that's going to invoke the action flow. And the second step is to add a results list widget to the Edit Policy page, and that's going to be bound to the query that lists all the vehicles related to the selected policy. Navigate to and expand the Business Object UI Policy node and open the Edit Policy instance page. In the Layout tab, expand the Interactions pane. There should be just the Update Policy and Session Parameter Data Service instances. Note the different icons for each type of interaction. Some are system generated, and they may have the same names as the ones you create. And when you define a stateless process, the system creates one called Stateless Process and then the name. Another one called Initiate Process with the name. That way you can initiate it both ways. In these cases, it's possible to choose the wrong one, so be careful. Now, click the green Add Interaction button and select the AF CR Vehicle-1 interaction instance, and then click Finish. We're done with the Interactions pane, so let's collapse it for now. With the AF CR Vehicle-1 interaction instance selected, in the Properties AF CR Vehicle-1 pane at the bottom, select the Inputs tab. Set the value of the policy input to be policy.id. You can use the expression wizard for that if you want. And go back to the General tab. From the Widgets pane at the right, drag a button widget onto the canvas to the left of the Save button. In the Properties button pane at the bottom, in the General tab, change the ID to add_vehicle, and for label, enter add vehicle ... Under the Actions section at the right, for Invoke, select Data Service Instance. In the Action Settings section, for Data Service Instance, select the AFCR Vehicle-1 Data Service. Scroll the Properties pane down some more, and for When Done Go To, change the selection from Current Page to None. That way, when the action flow is done, the window will close and no changes will be made to the page it was invoked from. Expand the Interaction pane again and click the green Add Interaction button. Scroll down and select the RTQ Vehicles Related to Policy query that we created a few minutes ago. Then click Finish. With the RTQ Vehicles Related ... interaction still selected, in the Properties Real-Time Query Instance pane at the bottom, check the checkbox for On-Page Load. Remember, failure to check the On-Page Load box will make the Edit Policy page behave a little unpredictably, so be sure to check that box. While still in the Refresh section, scroll down to the UI Event Name table and click Add. In the top pane, select the Create Vehicle and Relate to Policy-1 Data Service. In the bottom pane, select Success and click OK. This will have the effect that causes the list to be updated automatically when the action flow completes after creating a vehicle and relating it to a policy. Also, if we had chosen Current Page for the When Done Go To setting, it would have caused the browser to refresh the entire page and execute the data service again. The disadvantage of this approach is that refreshing the page can have unwanted results, such as changing the current tab in a tab widget back to the first tab. A better option is to use the new UI framework to refresh the interaction that is linked to the appropriate widget when the corresponding action is complete. So let's collapse the interactions pane for now to make more room, and then drag a results list widget between the column boxes between end date and add vehicle. For ID, enter vehicles, and for title, enter vehicles. For data service instance, select the RTQ vehicles related to a policy data service instance. Click OK to the Connect to Data Service Instance warning dialog. When we add this results list widget, the box containing the widget is added, but another column box is added above it that contains a field for user input and another box for containing the search button. If we pan to the right, we'll see the search button. So, when you bind a data service instance to a results list widget, the columns of the data service instance are shown in the results list widget. These columns represent the outputs of the data service. These columns represent the outputs of the data service, and by default, a column is added for every output value. In addition to showing the output columns, a search button is added inside the column box widgets, even if there are no input values to the source interaction. Any unwanted columns, as well as the search button, can be safely removed. Remember that removing a column from the widget's display does not remove the value from the underlying data, meaning the variables of the results list widget. For example, if you remove the object ID column, there will still be an object ID available to pass along to a data service. So let's select the entire column box widget. Right-click and delete it. Now let's remove the display of the object ID column in the results list widget. It'll still be available for expressions and such, but the user doesn't need to be bothered with it. And finally, let's close and save the Edit Policy Editor. It's a good idea to check the Problems tab for errors.